The 20th century was an era of incredible advancements and innovation, but it also gave rise to some of the most puzzling mysteries that remain unsolved to this day. From eerie disappearances to baffling crimes, the following cases have defied explanation for decades. In this video, we'll explore the most disturbing unsolved mysteries of the 20th century, enigmas that may never be unraveled. From 1982 to 1985, the Belgian province of Brabant was terrorized by a savvy and elusive gang known as the Mad Killers of Brabant. For 3 years, supermarkets, restaurants, gas stations, jewelers, and gun stores were robbed at gunpoint. Over and over, the Brabant Killers successfully took down one shop after another, seemingly at random, taking with them money, jewelry, and firearms. Eyewitness reports commonly referenced 3 men responsible for the carnage at each site. The media dubbed the anonymous trio the Giant, the Killer, and the Old Man. The crew officially began their crime spree on December 31st, 1981, where they would break into a military barracks and acquire several assault weapons which they would use in some future robberies. At first, it was pretty mild, with theft appearing to be the only goal. However, in August of 1982, the Brabant Killers would get their first taste of blood, and they appeared to like it. While robbing a French grocery store, police officers arrived on the scene, forcing the bandits to use their guns, in which 2 officers were seriously wounded. This set the wheels in motion for a no-limit assault on the province of Brabant. On a September afternoon, the trio strolled into a gun store in broad daylight in the capital city of Brussels. When police arrived, a shootout ensued, leaving 2 more officers wounded and 1 dead. On December 23rd, the crew robbed a hotel and restaurant in Beersel called L'Auberge du Chevalier, or the Knight's Inn, taking drinks and wine glasses to add to the randomness of the robberies. However, when police arrived, they found the caretaker of the inn, José van den Einde, brutally tortured to death. Police were now on alert, yet the crew seemed to pick up the pace, almost daring authorities to catch him. Over the next 2 months, 6 more stores were hit, leaving several wounded and 1 dead. On September 10th, they targeted a manufacturing factory where bulletproof vests were made off with several, while killing and injuring 2 of the workers. A week later, they saw a couple at a gas station while they were robbing a store next door. The gang decided that the couple's Mercedes was nice, so they killed them, took the car, then proceeded to go back to their burglary in progress. When officers arrived, 1 was gunned down, another wounded, and the killers got away in their new Mercedes, unscathed. On December 1st, 1983, the trio walked into a small shop, murdered the couple that owned it before taking a few $1,000s and vanishing into the Belgian streets. More than a year went by without incident, and it appeared the Brabant Killers called it quits as the streets were finally quiet again. That is, until September 27th of 1985, when all hell was officially unleashed on Belgium, like a scene out of the movie, Heat. 3 gunmen invaded a supermarket. They shot the first person they saw dead and grabbed his child as a hostage, going around and grabbing whatever they could with no apparent motive. As they were leaving, one of the gunmen randomly shot into a van that was pulling into the parking lot, killing the driver and seriously injuring a small boy that was in the back seat. Then, they made their way across town to a separate grocery store in Overijse. 3 little kids were playing outside near the store. For no reason at all, one of the madmen pointed his shotgun at the group of children and began to fire away, killing 1 and wounding the others. Customers responded to the chaos and tried to flee, but 5 could not get away, including the hostage who was executed right before they fled the scene. This brought the death toll to 8 on that day alone, and set the stage for the gang's finale on November 9th, 1985, in the town of Aalst. Just like the Overijse robbery, the 3 men parked the car in front of the grocer, painted their faces, and headed for the entrance armed with pump-action shotguns. Leaving the store at this time was a family of 4, 3 of whom were shot dead. The surviving boy was shot but lived. They continued shooting as they entered the store, taunting and laughing as they gunned down 5 more inside. As they were attempting to escape, the men met a line of cops who did not do a sufficient job of securing the parking lot, enabling the getaway car to escape. Officers lost the vehicle in just a few kilometers. And just like that, Belgium's mad killers were never seen or heard from, ever again. The devastation they left in their wake was unheard of. 28 dead, dozens more wounded. No part of these crimes made any sense at all. The amount of money, jewelry, and goods stolen seemed quite insignificant when compared to the risk of the crimes. The perpetrators appeared to have weapons training, and gun stores were common targets, leaving authorities to further speculate the motive. A few years ago, Belgian authorities released this picture of a man believed to be one of the Brabant Killers. However, 40 years later and the mystery remains. Who were the giant, the old man, and the killer? Lake Roopkund is an isolated body of water nestled high in the Himalayas, a whopping 16,500 feet above sea level. The lake is hidden under a sheet of ice for most of the year. However, the small lake does melt briefly in the summer, and it is at this time the thawing shallow waters reveal the dark, unsettling secret hiding underneath the frozen pond. In 1942, during patrol of the area, a forest ranger in India stumbled upon Lake Roopkund, and he noticed that something was off in the crystal-clear waters. The thawed lake appeared to be filled with bones, and upon closer inspection, he realized they were human. The ranger's find quickly spread through the science community, attracting top anthropologists from all over the world to come and see for themselves. For more than half a century, teams of scientists have been thoroughly examining and dissecting the lake, which contained the remains of 800 people. Theories began to circulate, with some suggesting an epidemic wiped out a small civilization, and the lake was used as a mass graveyard. Others think a single catastrophic event, like an avalanche or blizzard, was to blame. However, years and years of research was able to nullify these two theories. It was determined that the remains dated back as recent as 200 years to as far back as 1,200 years, with multiple races represented at the bottom of the lake. The preservation of the skeletons in the frigid waters gave scientists plenty to work with, as some of the bones still had flesh on them, and geneticists were able to trace their DNA from South Asia to Greece. Despite decades of research and investigation, Lake Roopkund continues to intrigue and perplex scientists and adventurers. The mystery of the skeletons remains unsolved, leaving the lake's secrets hidden beneath its icy surface, waiting to be uncovered by future explorers and researchers. On the morning of September 7, 1982, a 12-year-old paperboy named Johnny Gosch would set out on his newspaper delivery route in the suburbs of Des Moines, Iowa. Later that morning, Johnny's mother, Noreen, would answer the home phone to frustrated neighbors complaining about not receiving their newspapers. So, Noreen told her husband John to go look for Johnny and ask why he skipped their houses. John only had to travel 2 blocks before he noticed something unsettling. Johnny's wagon full of newspapers abandoned on the side of the street, with no trace of Johnny in sight. Police were notified, but they said they couldn't investigate a missing persons case until 72 hours had passed. Instead, they tried to convince Noreen that he likely ran away, but after reports began to come in from eyewitnesses around the area, the department changed their tune and began to investigate Johnny's disappearance as a kidnapping. 2 separate witnesses claimed to see Johnny talking to a suspicious man in a blue car, possibly a Ford Fairmont. Another paperboy said that he saw Johnny walking and remembers a man following not too far behind him. Search efforts began, with the Gosches hiring a retired NYPD detective and a retired FBI agent to assist as private investigators. 2 years later, on August 12, 1984, another Des Moines Register paperboy by the name of Eugene Martin disappeared while running his morning paper route, sparking speculation of a possible human trafficking ring in Des Moines. The very next month, Anderson Erickson Dairy in Des Moines decided to print the images of the 2 missing boys on their milk containers, sparking the national advertising program known as the Milk Carton Kids. In 1989, an inmate named Paul Bonacci, via his attorney, stated that he was also abducted as a teenager just like Johnny, and knew the boy well enough to describe certain scars and personal things about Johnny that were not made public. He further claimed that he played a part in Gosch's abduction, saying that he was forced to help kidnap Johnny.
Victim of sexual abuse since the age of 6. Is himself a convicted sex offender. Has been diagnosed with multiple personality disorder. It is only through these personalities that he remembers the day he helped kidnap Johnny Gosch. Benassi can call forth his alter egos at will. First to emerge, Mark Anderson, 15 years old.
All I remember him talking about was that this was the boy that they were going to, one of the boys they were going to take.
Paul says a Des Moines accomplice snuck up from behind as the abduction was made. Benassi did his part, chloroforming Johnny.
I held him down for a second. I put this thing that Emilio told me to over his face, and
Noreen verified his claims about her son and fully believed Mr. Bonacci, but the FBI would not entertain the idea, stating that Bonacci was not a credible witness. Plus, Paul's siblings claimed he was fabricating the story. In 1997, Noreen stated that she was visited by a man claiming to be Johnny, and that she immediately recognized the man as her missing boy. She said that they talked for an hour, and Johnny was too scared to come home because the group of people that abducted him are far too dangerous, and he did not want to jeopardize anyone's life. She would further explain in detail what she believes in her heart happened to Johnny in the self-published book titled, Why Johnny Can't Come Home. Noreen suggests that a national network of Satanists and pedos operate in the shadows of society, kidnapping and hurting children. The book quoted retired FBI Special Agent Ted Gunderson as saying, "Children are kidnapped and literally owned by the cult, and are sold on the open market to the highest bidder." Johnny's father, who is no longer married to Noreen, stated he never heard of any such visit from his son, and has not commented on Noreen's further claims. Some people believe Noreen, while others think she is creating these stories as a coping mechanism to deal with the trauma of a lost child. As of 2024, the whereabouts of the lost paperboys of Des Moines remain a mystery. As a result, Gosch's disappearance and the subsequent investigation, Iowa State Legislature passed the Johnny Gosch Bill, which required police to investigate child disappearances immediately, rather than wait 72 hours. Bessie Louise Haley and Glen Rollins Hyde met in 1927 in Los Angeles, and the couple would marry in Twin Falls, Idaho, the day after Bessie finalized her divorce from Earl Helmick on April 12, 1928. The couple had a love of nature and an outdoorsman-like spirit, so when Glen suggested they spend their honeymoon on the Colorado River, Bessie eagerly agreed. Clyde was attempting to break the record for fastest trek through the Grand Canyon, while Bessie was attempting to become the first woman to complete the run. Their journey began with excitement and determination as they embarked from Green River, Utah on October 20th, 1928, in their 20-foot homemade riverboat called a scow, which is commonly used to run the rivers in Idaho. According to Glen and Bessie's journal, they entered the canyon at Lee's Ferry on November 7th. The newlyweds stopped to restock supplies on about November 15th or 16th at the home of Emery Kolb, who sold gear and supplies to river riders. 2 days later, on November 18th, the two were spotted at Hermit Rapids, marking the last verified sighting of the couple alive. After a few weeks of no contact, family and friends grew weary and alerted authorities, who began an extensive search, which resulted in the discovery of their scow intact with supplies on board. The canyon's rugged terrain and unpredictable rapids added layers of mystery to their disappearance. The abandoned scow was discovered at Canyon Mile 237, which led investigators to believe that Glen and Bessie most likely met their demise at mile marker 232, or more commonly known as the Killer Fang. It gets its name from the large, sharp rock sticking out of the water near the end of the rapid, and the current drives rafters directly into the fang. The pour-over on the left side of the rapid forces rafters to get dangerously close to the Fang before banking hard left at the last minute. The newlyweds could have very easily been thrown from the scow attempting to maneuver the rapid. The most widely accepted theory is that the couple drowned. However, there was speculation of a staged disappearance or even that Bessie used the trip to kill Glen and disappear. There has been no evidence to verify or support these theories. Nevertheless, we are nearly a century removed from their disappearance, and the fate of Bessie and Glen Hyde remains a complete mystery. The legend of Australia's boogeyman, dubbed Mr. Cruel, began on August 22, 1987, when a masked intruder broke into a home in Lower Plenty, being a suburb of Melbourne, in the state of Victoria, and tied up a couple at gunpoint, then forced them into a closet before taking their 11-year-old daughter into the next room, where he would assault the poor girl for the next 2 hours. The family later told police that the man wore a black balaclava and that he made a phone call right before he left in which he referred to a person named Bozo. Police examined the phone records, finding no evidence of a call made at that time, leading investigators to believe this fake phone call was a planned red herring used to confuse the investigators. The masked predator waited more than a year before his second attack. On December 27, 1988, Mr. Cruel broke into the home of John Wills in Ringwood, Victoria, then bound John and his wife, gagged them both, and stuffed them in a closet. Then he grabbed their 10-year-old daughter, Sharon, along with some of her clothing, and left. John eventually freed himself, only to find Sharon was gone, at which point he contacted police. Sharon was found 18 hours later wandering the Bayswater High School parking lot. Sharon had spent nearly an entire day being assaulted until the assailant decided to let her go. Since he called her out by name, police suspected that Mr. Cruel targeted Sharon following the release of this newspaper article a few months prior. When questioned about her abduction, Sharon was not able to give much of a physical description of her kidnapper. She claimed that Mr. Cruel was very gentle and nice. He fed her well, even going as far as brushing and flossing her teeth. Just like the first attack, more than a year would pass before Mr. Cruel would strike again. The third attack occurred on July 3, 1990, in the town of Canterbury, Victoria. Brian and Rosemary Linus were at a party when the intruder broke into their home to their 15 and 13-year-old daughters, who were home alone. Mr. Cruel tied up the 15-year-old, then blindfolded the younger girl, Nicola, put her in her parents' car, and pulled out of the driveway. A few miles down the road, the two would switch vehicles, as the Linus's car was found abandoned on the side of the road. According to Nicola, they went to another house where he restrained her to a bed. And over the next 50 hours, Mr. Cruel would assault Nicola off and on, before eventually dropping her off not too far from her home. There was little to go on for the investigators, due to Mr. Cruel's careful attention to detail. He would bathe his victims thoroughly and clip their fingernails as to remove any potential DNA. He blindfolded the girls so they never knew where they were, plus he wore the balaclava to hide his face. All they knew was that he was around 5 feet 8 inches tall. The final attack occurred on April 13, 1991 in the Templestowe district of Victoria. While 13-year-old Carmine Chan was babysitting her 2 younger siblings, Mr. Cruel broke into the home, tied the 2 younger children up in a closet, grabbed Carmine, and fled the scene. The tragic difference from the previous 3 attacks is that Carmine Chan was never returned home. Her body was found in a field a year later. This led some to speculate that maybe a copycat was responsible for Chan's death, as Mr. Cruel had yet to kill any of his victims. However, the killer wore a black balaclava, broke into the home, and kidnapped one of the daughters, just like Mr. Cruel. Also, in all 4 cases, the suspect stated he only wanted money before taking the girls. This was clearly a distraction to throw off the investigation, like the fake phone call in the first attack. Following Chan's disappearance, Australia authorities launched one of the largest and costliest investigations in the country's history. In 2016, the reward for Mr. Cruel's identity was increased to $1 million, which stands today. Yet the police have no suspects. and Mr. Cruel remains Australia's mysterious boogeyman.